Hello and welcome to the Events Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Taylor, and each week I talk with event professionals about how they plan, promote, and run their events. Whether you're running small meetups or large conferences, exhibitions, and concerts, we focus on finding actionable tips that you can use straight away. The podcast is sponsored by our ticketing system called EventsFrame. Make the switch from Eventbrite today for our amazing ticket system, and we have no ticket fees, just a low monthly cost. We've got full integration with all the main payment gateways, with Stripe, with PayPal, with Braintree, and we've got the best email integrations out there. We integrate with almost every email marketing system, so MailChimp, Zapier, Infusionsoft, Aweber, to name just a few. We've got thousands of events live on our system, so please give it a try. And if you're interested to try, drop me an email at dan@eventsframe.com, dan@eventsframe.com with the subject line podcast, and I'll send you a special secret discount code. So on to today's interview. This was really interesting. I spoke to two people from Ireland called David Costello and Clare Kennedy. They're entrepreneurs who split between Ireland and the Czech Republic, and they run the Czech chapter of something called the Founder Institute. It's a really interesting accelerator for new startups, like pre-seeds or really early stage accelerator. And they run a bunch of sessions, and they invited me to be one of the mentors, which I was proud to participate in. And the reason I got them on the pod was they started from nothing and ran a couple of meetups, and they got 75 people to turn up to the first meetup, and they got 100 to turn up for the second. So I want to talk about how you can start a meetup completely from scratch and fill the room. It's a really interesting story of how they started this. And the first event they ran on, I think, like 5 days notice. It was a really, really quick event. They used Facebook ads, Instagram ads, and partnering with local entrepreneurs. So I think there's a ton of value to anyone here looking to start a meetup and try to get people in the door. So all the best. Hope everyone's having a great week, and on to the interview. Hi, and welcome to the Events Podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be talking to Clare Kennedy and David Costello. They run something called the Founder Institute, which I've been involved in. It's essentially a series of events for startup entrepreneurs, and there's also an element of an incubator in it. So I'm just kind of learning about it myself and learning about these guys. So hi, guys, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Dan. Hello, thanks so much for having us.
Pleasure. Like behind the scenes, we had a bit of the usual audio dramas, but hopefully we've resolved them now. So we're re-recording the intro. Guys, so first of all, it'd be really great just to get a bit of an introduction to your guys' backgrounds in work and business, and then we can get into how you came to found the Founder Institute in Prague.
Yeah, so quickly about us, we have been kind of working with like high potential startups for the last kind of 10 years for myself and kind of 6 years for Claire. Yeah. And mainly up to the last 2 years as in kind of like employee roles. So worked in kind of a large media startup. Claire's worked in a health food company. So about 2 years ago, we decided to set up our own kind of digital marketing agency, specifically targeting high potential startups who've received funding as our target market.
Yep.
We've looked at kind of, I suppose, more interesting industries, kind of futurist or kind of bleeding edge tech industries like blockchain and things like that as kind of our primary targets, mainly because there seems to be a lot of interesting things happening there. They're usually pretty high growth, and certainly with the kind of example of blockchain, they've got some pretty good behind them. So you get a chance to do kind of a lot of interesting projects. Mm-hmm. And I suppose with any kind of startup, the ones that are growing the fastest usually are the most exciting ones to work with, and they're the ones we kind of target.
It's interesting with blockchain because I've been interested in this for a long time. I actually went to the first ever Bitcoin conference in the world, which was held in 2011 in Prague. Wow. I didn't buy any Bitcoin in it, but I did start buying in 2013, so I've still done okay out of it. But it's interesting because now, it's just dropped off a cliff, and you had all the ICO mania and blockchain mania, and then it's just like, all the crypto prices have dropped, the ICO market's just dropped, and now is probably the time it's going to get interesting, I think. So the time everyone's kind of forgotten about it is usually the time when interesting stuff starts happening, and I mean, I'm not sure how much, there's obviously a lot less funding around, but I'm sure it's going to come back.
Definitely. I think the technology behind the whole thing is really where the potential is. I think the currency element was a bit, as you say, somewhat mania kind of based, where everyone was investing in Bitcoin, even mostly people didn't even understand the kind of technology behind it or what it was actually about. They just said, look, I want to buy a Lamborghini.
Yeah. It seems like a good way to do it.
Yeah, kind of buy some Bitcoin. So we actually even, like, some of our clients now even pay us in crypto, which is quite interesting, because it gives you kind of a bit more insight on that side.
How did you come to start this agency, and how did you end up coming to Prague? Because I guess you're both from Ireland. So how did you? What was the story behind starting this company, and did that coincide with moving to Prague, or did you just come here to start the company?
How did we it's a bit of a story for Disrupted.
Yeah,
we came together.
It's never a simple story. There's always like a narrative. I always say there's like a narrative fallacy. If everyone wants to give a smooth story, but there's usually a complicated story with a few twists and turns.
That's it. I've been thinking a lot about it recently, actually, with the Founder Institute, and hearing people's pitches, and hearing even yourself and the guys and the other mentors kind of introducing their companies, and thinking, geez, we really need to sit down at some point and figure out, a good story that actually makes, you know what I mean, that works for when we explain to people how it came together.
Yeah, I suppose the short story is that back in 2014 we entered the Department of Enterprise in Ireland, had a competition, Ireland's Best Young Entrepreneur, and we pitched in the kind of new idea category. And what we actually originally pitched was a mobile app,
a communications app.
For micro enterprises. So, say for example, if you were a graphic designer and you had, say, a couple of kids, or you were kind of minding them at home, you'd stopped working, but you had 3 or 4 hours free a week, that would connect you with people who kind of had small jobs where you could earn a little bit of extra income and things like that. So we ended up winning a section in that, and we received some seed funding to kind of get the thing up and running. That's when we ran into our first major disaster as a startup. We employed an Irish app company to develop the mobile app, and
with no research, actually. Thinking about it, it's a terrible decision, but
so they basically completely destroyed the whole concept,
but they spent the money. That was fine. They were good at that.
It's always hard if you don't have a technical co-founder and you go to a dev shop. It's like it just makes it harder. I mean, you can succeed, and loads of companies do, but it's it's hard. You're starting off from a tough position, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. But after that, I suppose we completely kind of pivoted. Through kind of pitching the app and talking to different people, we'd made a few contacts. So we managed to just kind of start off as a sort of traditional kind of digital agency, and
focusing on content creation, really, wasn't it? It was like editorial content and video content.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So we started with that, and then we kind of built a very small base, and then looked at, well, what are we really kind of specializing in? We don't want to be kind of just another generic agency that kind of targets everyone. So we looked at what we'd done in kind of our work history, and it all been kind of driving growth for startups, basically. So we thought, well, what's the kind of biggest opportunity there? And I think it's kind of, we thought it was look at emerging industries, look at startups that have some funding already, so they do have money. The biggest problem with most startups is that they have no money and they don't want to pay for anything. Whereas if you've got funded startups, they've got some capital there to kind of do some interesting stuff, especially if they're trying to drive kind of user base growth, which is the biggest thing these days, more than even revenue a lot of the time, is to kind of build that big user base. So that's where we kind of focused our efforts, and it's kind of proven pretty successful for us, certainly in the last kind of year, where we've kind of set up we have an office in Dublin, and we're looking at somewhere to set up a second office that was maybe kind of better value, but still had the same kind of advantages that say Ireland would have. And Claire had been
I was on Erasmus here like a few years ago now, and just kind of fell in love with the city, and wanted to experience another side to it, outside of kind of the typical student life. And we'd been back and forth here quite a bit, visiting friends, and it just seemed like, a great place for us to set up our second branch.
My wife actually came to Prague on Erasmus and stayed here as well, interestingly.
I think a few people have, actually. A few of our friends that live here have done the same thing. So.
Almost everyone who lives in Prague, they all leave and they all want to come back. Like everyone misses it, I mean, you can get sick of Prague, but you always miss it when you leave for some reason. It's not every city's like that, but Prague is for some reason.
Yeah, I think it's still kind of at that stage where it's not like kind of a London or a Paris, where it's kind of a little bit anonymous. It's a bit more kind of a smaller, kind of more vibrant city, I think.
Yeah.
So are you still based? So you still have an office in Dublin? You actually have a physical office in Dublin, do you?
Yeah. We have an office about kind of a couple of miles outside the city centre in South Dublin. Yeah.
And what do you do? Is the main thing you're doing like you're actually creating video content and writing stuff? Are you actually creating the content for clients, or are you helping them do it?
Yeah, we moved away from that when we kind of decided, what was it really that we wanted our focus to be, and we kind of did that about a year ago. So a lot of the times with our clients, they will have a team kind of in place. Some of them will have some content creators there, and we essentially come in and create their kind of long-term digital marketing and like traditional marketing strategies. So we'll kind of oversee certain elements of design, certain elements. I know Dave has some background with computer programming as well. So it's really kind of an all-round marketing and digital marketing strategy. We don't actually, it depends on our clients. I mean, we've had a client for quite a number of years, and we do more of a creative agency with them, creating video content and things. But I mean, in the past year, we've been focusing on, as Dave said, high potential startups and kind of setting a strategy in place for them, whereas they wouldn't have had one before.
Got it. How did you come to be involved in the Founder Institute? What was the story behind that?
Yeah, that was something we actually, through LinkedIn, they actually reached out to us and said they were looking to establish a chapter in Prague. I think they basically just looked at our profiles and said, yeah, you guys could potentially launch this for us. So it seemed like a really good opportunity, because it's our kind of presence in Prague at the time certainly wasn't very strong at all. It's kind of a difficult, especially if you don't speak kind of fluent Czech, or you're not kind of involved in the kind of local communities as much. If you were say native here, so it offered us kind of a way into kind of linking in with the startup community and ecosystem here, which is great, and that was the biggest opportunity for us. Was to just get that foothold there. Can
you give some more detail about what is the Founder Institute? The website for anyone is fi.co. Quite a nice domain they've got. What's the background for it? What does it do, and who's behind it, etc.?
Yeah, so it's the biggest pre-seed accelerator in the world. Essentially, they're based out of Silicon Valley. The CEO, Deo Ressi, kind of really interesting guy. He's set up 9 or 10 large scale companies at this stage. He's worked with, he was in college with Elon Musk, and he worked on the mission to Mars kind of initiative with him. And there's chapters in 200 cities now, in about 60 or 70 countries around the world. So it's a massive organization. It's created a network of around 11,000, I think, CEO mentors. You're one of those, Dan, included in there.
Proud to be part of it.
yeah. So it's a great network, even just to be a part of. So the idea behind it is to take aspiring tech founders and take them from pre-seed to the end at the start of the course to by the end of the course they'll have incorporated their company, and they'll be ready to kind of start trading or looking for funding or whatever else their first step is going to be.
And how often, how long do these courses run for? And does each chapter run multiple courses a year? What's the general format?
Yeah, so the courses generally are 14 weeks long, so it's between 2 and 3 per year, depending on kind of breaks and schedules and things like that. So ideally, each semester will have approximately 50 founders who will start it. The pass rate's only about 30% for the course. Yeah. So the idea is to produce entrepreneurs at the end of it who have really kind of polished, high quality startups ready to go, essentially, to feed. And because it's a wider ecosystem of the CEO mentors and the partners, would like a lot of the major partners would be VCs or funds and things like that who want to invest in these startups, that the companies that would emerge at the end would be as polished and as high quality as possible. So it's kind of quite a harsh system, but it produces some good quality companies. I think the worldwide portfolio now for the Founder Institute is worth over 20 billion or something like that. So,
honestly, I don't think it's I think 30% is high. 30% to really from people, because if you're talking pre-seed, it's a lot of these ideas are never going to fly. I mean, that sounds like a lot to me. That sounds pretty good.
Yeah. Like I think it is. Yeah, like even by the time you've gotten to we can only kind of accept about 50 startups. So by the time you even got to that stage, you've already kind of whittled down some of the ideas that don't really make sense, or the people aren't really kind of committed to it. So it's kind of a pretty established course, and the guys have really refined it down. So it is a case of we will help any kind of entrepreneur that starts in the course as much as possible, but they really have to kind of stand on their own 2 feet and
sure.
kind of put up their idea.
Cool. And I guess, yeah, it's probably good to have this kind of accelerated, probably slightly high pressure period, because, you know, if you can't get through that successfully, you're probably not, you know, there's a good chance you're not going to make it with your idea, or even as an entrepreneur. I mean, maybe you'll make it as an entrepreneur with a different idea, but with this idea, it's, you know, it's probably good to kind of force it to make or break it early on, because you can drift along for 2 or 3 years slowly as a side project and never really try to validate it, and nothing happens. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's kind of something that I think Adeo, the CEO, says himself. He goes, well, we make the course tough because being an entrepreneur is much tougher than that. So
I think it was one of our mentors in the first event that was asked the difference between an entrepreneur and a freelancer. So, you know, you live, breathe, and eat essentially, you know, everything, your idea, you live within your company. It's everything. So that's kind of how, you know, Founder Institute targets and how they've developed their program is based around that. And I mean, yeah, I guess if you can't kind of develop with the program, then maybe it's the wrong idea, or maybe entrepreneurship kind of isn't for that person at that time.
Definitely. And I think, you know, we talked about this last week at the event, like, it's kind of become cool to be an entrepreneur now. It's really started. I've noticed it much more in the last 5 years, and even maybe the last 2 years a lot. You know, I think given that there's so many YouTubers, like people like Gary Vaynerchuk and these people who are like becoming superstars as entrepreneurs, you know, and it's like it's interesting to me because I think it's attracting a lot of people who want to be entrepreneurs, but they don't want the reality of your entrepreneur, which is existential dread, misery, stress about when you're going to get paid, stress about when your next client's coming. You know, great highs and then crushing lows right afterwards. Like,
yeah, sure.
And it doesn't mean to say that anyone should try it, you know, but you've got to be realistic about what it actually entails, you know, and it's not the same life as having a job by any means.
Yeah, that's it. And I think especially, yeah, as a startup, I mean, we found this, and I think we're still finding it. Like you're every position in the company, you know, you deal with everything, with the client facing, even down to kind of the most basic tasks kind of in the office until you get yourself situated, you know, or you grow your team. So I think that can be quite difficult for people to deal with as well.
Yeah. So let's get back to the story. So these guys contacted you. I guess they contacted a bunch of people because they've got, looking at the map, they've got chapters all over. What happened? How did you get from that to actually running the Czech Republic chapter?
Yeah, so that was interesting in that the first step we had to take was to essentially line up the directors for the program. So obviously it was myself and Claire initially, and then we were looking for someone within the kind of community, the business community that we knew, that had kind of really good contacts and was a lot more established than we were, because the big part of the process is having to recruit CEO mentors, which is quite a difficult thing to do if you don't really have personal contact with them. Most people will kind of dismiss it. So that's how we kind of ended up speaking to Matt, and he's been kind of fantastic to... Yeah,
that's Matt East, who's I think president of AIESEC now. People probably know the student card organization. And he runs that in multiple countries, and he's president of the Worldwide Federation, I believe, right now as well.
Yeah. And I think he's been in Prague for close to 20 years now at this stage.
I think so.
So he's got a really great network, and yourself included, Dan, in that. And it was great, just a great kind of boost for us just to get those initial mentors like yourself in there who have that kind of background and can deliver really kind of high quality presentations, because that's a big part of, I suppose, attracting people to the course, because yourself and the other CEO mentors are going to be the people who drive the businesses forward within the course. So without that, it doesn't have much value, you know.
It's true. I know we haven't even gotten to the events side of it yet, but that's the thing. Just generally with events, like if you partner with someone who's got an audience, that's always a huge, because that's the biggest question everyone always asks is, how do I get people to come to my event, you know? And the best way, or one of the best ways, is to find someone who's got an audience and get them involved in it, and then get their audience, you know? And whether that's like you run it with a co-working space and they've got an email list, or you run it with an entrepreneur who's got a bunch of contacts, you know, trying to do things, if you're kind of new, and you're kind of new to the Czech entrepreneurial scene, you know, so you've got contacts but not a huge amount, you know, it's always better to partner with someone who does have that audience built in, because it just makes it so much easier.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it made sense. It was a great fit, I think.
Yeah, and a big part of what we have to do initially, actually, for the Founder Institute, was to establish a group of partners. So as you say there, we've partnered with a number of the startup groups, the likes of kind of Prague Startup Center, Startup Yard, Node 5. And
when you say partner with these guys, what does that mean? I mean, you're going to use their venue, you get it for free, you promote them as well. Like, how does the relationship work with these guys?
Yeah, it can vary depending on the partnership. I mean, it can be pretty straightforward. Whereas, we can use their venue, and with that, then their logo will be shared across the kind of FI social networks, as well as the FI Prague Facebook page as well. I mean, the main Founder Institute Twitter, I think, has between nearly 80,000 followers. So, I mean, you're kind of leveraging their followers as well.
Yep.
I mean, some of the partnerships, then, yeah, I think it'll be a case of, they'll share certain amounts of media, will share their logos, or they'll share an event space with us as well. Or there's other forms of partnerships as well, like fellowships.
Yeah. So we'd offer kind of free places on the courses for them, and then for like the co-working spaces and things like that, to get 50 or 100 people who are aspiring to start their own businesses into their venues is quite good for them, because obviously they're going to see what the different locations are all about when they may not have gotten that opportunity before. So that's quite a good benefit, I think, for the partners. And it doesn't usually cost them anything at all, because these are free events, and also we only kind of would have them on days where they maybe don't have an event on in the evening or something like that. So the place would be empty anyway. So it's a case of, we can get these 100 entrepreneurs in, and maybe a small percentage of those will end up paying for space within your co-working space anyway. So,
Definitely. How did you, so the first event you ran, I believe it was the first one, was you had some presentations on the transition from employee to entrepreneur, which that's what I think the one I was at. How did you, and you had a good crowd of that, I think, I don't know, over 70 people, is that right, for the first event?
Yeah, I think we ended up having about 75 people for that event. So it was great, considering
that was fantastic.
Yeah, we only had kind of, I suppose, 5 or 6 days to promote it.
So I'm curious, like, let's get into that. How did you get the venue, and how did you promote the event? How did you get those 70 people, and how did you, let's start off with what was your process? Like, what did you do first in terms of organizing this event?
Yeah, well, we tend to, we'll start off, I suppose, with the venue. That probably makes the most sense. The venue is actually the office of one of our CEO mentors, Jacob. That's his office space there. So he was
very cool place, right on overlooking Old Town Square in Prague, which is really cool.
Yeah, very cool.
Very cool. Yeah, absolutely. And he's been great in terms of kind of the level of support that he's given us throughout. And for him, he's kind of in the same boat as us. His offices are in the States, whereas ours are in Dublin, and he'd established an office here, but he was obviously looking for more kind of presence in the local ecosystem. And his main focus is startups as well. They're a digital development agency, so they create MVPs and do things like that. So he was keen, in the same way we were, to kind of get a foothold here. And
we were very fortunate that he offered his space to us.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think he kind of wanted the founders to see what they're doing as well. Mm-hmm. So having them in his own office space gave him an opportunity to do that. And then from the marketing side of things, a lot of the stuff we work on is kind of in collaboration with the HQ, the FI HQ. So we obviously, as a digital marketing agency, we have a number of kind of different kind of strategies to drive people to basically to attend the events. So we post on multiple platforms, use kind of paid social media campaigns. Instagram is actually quite a good one at the minute.
Yeah, let's get into detail about how you did this. I mean, so the main page was a Facebook page, is that right? I mean, the only presence I saw was you created a Facebook event. Was that the main thing you were driving people to get them to register?
Facebook and Instagram, they were kind of the main drivers. A lot of it was to do with the targeting that we used. We were very, very kind of detailed targeting through Facebook and Instagram that allowed us to kind of really hit those people who would be interested in the event. So
can you talk about how you did that? So were you creating paid ads targeted on how would that work? I don't know much about Facebook ads myself, so I'm really interested to hear how you did that to promote an event.
Yeah, it was only a small scale budget. Like as I said, we only ran it for kind of 5 or 6 days. I think it was less than €100 for the budget, so it wasn't like a massive budget by any means. So we ran a Facebook campaign. I was targeting kind of people who had maybe expressed interest, say, in one of the other kind of startup organizations in Prague, like say Startup Yard or one of these other ones. So say they're members of one of those groups. They were within the kind of.
So you're targeting people who are members of specific groups.
Interest. Yeah, interest definitely played a big part, targeting specific interests. Obviously, it was an extremely narrow demographic as well. And I think, we used the resources that we had on hand to create the graphics to kind of just have everything kind of branded, I guess.
Yeah, there was a lot of content there. We also used like sponsored in-mail campaigns, so targeting founders who live in Prague with less than 1 year or 2 years experience.
So in-mail, is this LinkedIn onto now then?
Yeah, this was onto LinkedIn as well. So we did that. It was sponsored in-mail, so we managed to hit a few people with that as well. And then we had an event on Meetup that was promoted by HQ themselves. We got about 10 or 20% of our visitors through that. But again, it was.
Instagram and Facebook were definitely the most successful for us. I mean, we kind of knew when we were doing it that an in-mail campaign wouldn't be as successful. I mean, when you're using when you've got such a narrow bandwidth for who you're targeting, it generally doesn't work as well. I mean, and
isn't LinkedIn adverts quite expensive? And the times I've looked at LinkedIn advertising, it's looked super expensive.
Yeah. In-mail actually works much better. I think you get it's much better value for money.
And that allows you just to mail message people directly on LinkedIn, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah. So you can target people in a lot of different ways. I mean, you can look for their job titles. Depending on the company, you can possibly search for the company and target them like that. I mean, their targeting system on the in-mail campaigns are great, but it was far too narrow for us. And because we were looking for such a specific type of person. So we really found that the Facebook and Instagram just worked a lot better for us. But I mean, we said we tested on LinkedIn just to see. We got a little bit of interest, but nowhere near as much of interest as we did like running the paid campaigns, like Dave said, using the graphics and kind of posting consistent content on Facebook and Instagram.
So when you say using the graphics, what content were you posting as part of the ads? And was it just a call to action to register, or was it some information about startups? What was the process on that? I'm really curious about using because I've never used Facebook ads or LinkedIn or Instagram once. I'm really curious about, because it sounds like the majority of your attendees, you're saying, came from Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah, I think that was a lot to do with the type of audience we were kind of targeting, and as well as that, because the event was free. Definitely, we would use kind of different platforms and things like that if it was a paid event. Mm-hmm. You'd kind of look a little bit more like remarketing and things like that, because with paid events, you kind of have to hit people 3 or 4 times, whereas with a free event, the likelihood of someone signing up is a lot higher on the first impression, essentially.
Was the advert just literally like, a link to the page, so here's a page, register, it's free? There wasn't any kind of steps to go through to get to that?
We started off advertising or really highlighting who the mentors were, because I mean, for us, that was like our unique selling point,
Sure.
Look at these, just kind of describing who the mentors were, really putting value behind, a reason why you should attend the event. And then we followed up with them. Again, I know I mentioned graphics. We kind of just designed a poster or banner and used the same graphics, used the same design essentially for the other banners. And then we described kind of other parts of the event, kind of what the agenda for the event was going to be, the type of people that should attend. We gave a little bit more detail as the days kind of went on. But in everything that we posted, it was always a link to register for tickets.
And did you advertise in the Facebook feed, or have the adverts off to the right of the page on Facebook?
Yeah, these would be feed posts. Yeah,
on feed. Yeah.
We also did some video content as well, but video content was just kind of to support the event promotion. Right. If that makes sense.
Yeah. What about Instagram? Because I'm fascinated by Instagram. Because a few people have been telling me recently it's underpriced as an advertising medium, and it won't always be like that. Do you find that? And I'm curious, how did you do? Because I use Instagram a little bit, but I don't do stories or anything like that. I mean, how do you advertise on Instagram? Do you create a story that people see on their screen when they log on, or how does it work?
Yes, stories can be quite effective. I would definitely agree that it's kind of undervalued at the minute. People use it for very kind of specific industries, and they don't think that you can use it for, say, stuff like events, like corporate stuff either. But if as long as your content is really, really visual and you can kind of create like that kind of visual impression with people, it'll definitely be effective. And Facebook ads are so much more competitive than Instagram ads at the minute. So you do end up you will get better value essentially.
And I guess Instagram, you can either, I guess it can either be a story or it can be in their feed. Is that right? Is that how the adverts work?
Yeah. You can actually even now they've made it really, really easy once you're setting up your Facebook ads, because obviously they own Instagram as well. You can just link them straight in there, so they'll show up in your Instagram feed and your Facebook.
So you can create. I think that's useful for people. You can create a joint ad in Facebook and also push it to Instagram.
Yeah, straight away. Yeah. You don't have to really edit it if you don't want to for Instagram. It just connects.
That's interesting, yeah. Because it's interesting. I've had a couple of guests on. There's a guy you should check out. I interviewed who runs the marketing meetup in the UK, and they run a bunch of, focused on marketing, free meetups. And he does a lot of Facebook, but it's essentially free, for just free posting in groups. The kind of the legwork stuff, not paid ads. But you're the first people I've spoken to who've really done it, and it was a success. Obviously, I mean, if you only spent like €100 and you got 75 people, that's pretty impressive, I think.
Yeah, we've worked with campaigns up to kind of 20 or 30,000 euro per client per month, and at that sort of level, like you can really kind of achieve an awful lot. Like people underestimate how much you can actually do with Facebook because they see it as a free platform, but even Facebook themselves are reducing the organic reach on posts more and more all the time, trying to push people into at least putting small budgets, because obviously they're a company that needs to make money from the platform. But if you're dealing with large scale budgets and you're a company and you've got that kind of capital, the value for money you'll get from that is pretty high up there with any other kind of platform that you can use.
Sure. Do you still do much promotion on Google Adwords now, or do you find that's being replaced by Facebook as a kind of paid channel?
No, I think AdWords is still as relevant as it was. Like Google are great in that there's so much you can do within AdWords.
Yes, I mean you can lose a lot. Well, not lose a lot of time. You can spend a lot of time in there.
Yeah. So there's a lot more you can do with AdWords than obviously you can do on social media platforms. But stuff we found really that works really well is kind of creating remarketing audiences. So someone visits your website, then they see your ad, things like that, where this is kind of going back to if you're looking for kind of paid events versus free events. For paid events, you want to, as I said, you want to hit people 3 or 4 times, because that's how long it's going to take them to kind of decide to pull the trigger and actually pay for a ticket.
Yeah,
it's obviously a lot harder to get people to pay than get people to register for a free ticket. So that's where.
Can I just stay on that point, because that's interesting. I haven't heard that before. So you're saying for paid events, you think 3 or 4 times is the number of times people should see an advert?
Yeah, I kind of find that to be the case. Like if you look at, say, for example, what's a good example of this? Like the Web Summit.
Yep.
I don't know if you've heard of that before.
Yeah, I saw Web Summit ads like a million times. Like everywhere I went on the internet, I was obviously someone they figured wanted to go to the Web Summit, because I was getting retargeted like crazy for that.
Exactly. Yeah, they do it really, really effectively. Like if you say, for example, if you sign up to their like mailing list or something like that, like you'll get personalized mails, and then you'll see their ads everywhere. You'll see their ads through AdWords, and you'll see their ads on social media as well through like Facebook Pixel and things like that. So you're kind of, if you're anyway inclined to buy a ticket or to register for a ticket, they have a really effective way of kind of funneling you in there, and they increase the urgency the closer it gets to the event as well. So you'll start to see kind of an increasing amount of stuff popping up across pretty much everywhere you are when you're online.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. How did you get any attendees from? Because obviously, you had Matt East and people and some of your partners. Did you get them to promote it, and did that also bring in attendees as well as the paid ads? Your network, just their contacts.
Yeah, certainly with the first event, I know there was a lot of the guys from Oaks Lab were interested in seeing Jacob speak. So kind of he brought those in. For the last event, Matt certainly brought in some people from GTS who were interested in kind of seeing how the whole system works. I think a lot of people are kind of curious about it because it hasn't been done in Prague before. Like we spoke to a VC today, and like he said, yeah, it's a big part of what's missing is that kind of inspirational kind of idea stage in Prague, the kind of pre-seed. So like there's lots of kind of seed accelerators, there's lots of kind of Series A VCs, things like that. But for the pre-seed, for getting people into that kind of starting a business sort of mindset, there isn't a huge amount here yet. So they're really interested and curious to see how this kind of pans out and how it works and how much interest even that there's going to be within Prague for that.
Cool. Guys, well, I don't want to keep you much longer. That was super interesting.
Great.
I want to say, guys, where can people find you online? Anything you want to promote, either your personal accounts or company accounts? I can add links to the show notes as well, but where's the best place for people to find you online?
Yeah, I think if people want to reach out to us through the website, disruptdigi.com, that's a pretty good place to kind of get us. You'll always find us on email there.
We're always on LinkedIn.
Yeah, always on LinkedIn as well. We do quite a lot. Kind of link in groups and stuff, marketing groups and things like that. So yeah, either of those platforms are probably the best way to reach out if anyone's got any questions or anything else like that.
Good, guys. Well, pleasure to talk to you. Best of luck with Founder Institute, and have a great Christmas as well.
Thanks so much, Dan.
Cheers.
Take care.
Do you want to sell more tickets to your amazing events? EventsFrame event ticketing has been built to minimize the amount of time it takes to buy a ticket. Result? You sell more tickets. Check out eventsframe.com.